Should we talk about Batman with them today?
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of Batman,
Yeah.
everybody like Batman versus Superman?
Yeah. 3-hour one.
I didn't.
Extended cut.
Yeah, the extended cut's better.
Extended cut.
I didn't love it.
I mean, Wonder Woman's
The second cut was much better. And then I actually saw a mashup or a re-edit online called Man of Tomorrow this past week that it got pulled, but look around, I'm sure you can probably find it. It's a re-edit of Man of Steel and Batman Superman. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes or something, and it's fantastic.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, it's all the dumb stuff is gone. Superman's really like a superhero, like he's a good guy, doesn't hurt people. Zod doesn't get killed by Superman. He dies, but not by Superman. Yeah. So, you guys all read Batman. Scott's rolling Batman with Greg, right? Hold on a second. So, what can I say? So yeah, so what else is everybody reading these days besides Batman?
Flash.
Rebirth. Harley Quinn.
Rebirth. Okay, Rebirth. What does everyone think of Rebirth? They like it?
Yeah.
Is it a step in a better direction?
Yes.
Is there any book that's not working for you?
Aquaman.
Gotham. There's no Gotham.
No, the character, Gotham and Gotham Girl, not the finest.
Well, I've read this coming week's issue.
Getting there.
It's interesting what happens. It comes out on Wednesday. It's a pretty big change in what we've seen. So, but I don't, so what do you guys, we're going to be talking about, what do you guys think of Duke Thomas?
Yeah.
Harper Row?
Yeah.
Why boo?
She hasn't done anything since she was
Where's
introduced.
Captain?
Tell that to Scott. See what he says. I'm sure he disagrees.
She defeated Mother in the Batman and Robin Eternal storyline.
Oh.
Comic you didn't read, apparently she did something. What about, did you guys like Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Pretty cool character.
Kind of a Slenderman ripoff, though. You got to admit.
I don't think it's a rip-off. I think it was, yeah, an homage. I mean, it was an interesting take. I mean, the thing is, let's be realistic. There's only so many Bat villains you can regurgitate. And I mean, that's one of the nice things about All-Star Batman is we're seeing a lot of these other characters that Scott didn't handle in the other book show up, including Harvey Dent, which is kind of cool. But he also, I mean, in his run, I mean, it's pretty impressive. I mean, the stuff that he introduced that's now become canon. I mean, Court of Owls, which that's a pretty big talent. I mean, that's a pretty big thing. And I mean, I thought both his Joker stories were pretty phenomenal. But what did you think about? Has everyone read the run? I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but if you haven't read it yet, really, why are you here? But what did you think about Bruce's decision at the end of the run to go back to being Batman? To giving up his potential happy ending and becoming who he once was. Did you guys like that?
As it should be.
Who else is going to be Batman?
It's true. Harper Row. What do you think about? Do you think we're going to see another Joker story? I mean, I know there's not 3 Jokers, but do you think that we're going to see the evolution of that healed Joker come back? Or do you think that's forgotten with the Rebirth?
I think it was really good. It was a terrifying Joker. It was an interesting look at it, and it really made you scared of him because of how brilliant he was, but also how patient he was. In Endgame, he hid underneath Jim Gordon's bed for hours.
All right, so
he was just waiting.
I don't want to cut you off, but it's so more important.
Sorry,
I was like running back from lunch with Sean Murphy.
Yeah.
And me.
And you.
Is Scott's mic on?
Is this on?
We cannot hear you.
Is it on now? I didn't know Greg was going to be here. You should come up here.
You're welcome to come, Greg. We'd love to
Come
have
up
you.
here.
Nice. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Capullo.
Scott Snyder. Hey everybody. Now I feel like he can ask me all the things that I didn't want to answer.
Let's start with the witches.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations to both of you on a historic run on Batman. And I think we were all talking about this. One of the things that's remarkable is how much canon you both have now created as part of this mythology with the Court of Owls and with characters like Harbor Row, Mr. Bloom. Was that your intent? I mean, when you go into a job like Batman, is it your intent to add to the mythos or just maintain it while you have it?
No, your intent is just not to get fired. After one issue, which I really feel like, one of the great things about sort of coming onto Batman was, I was terrified when we started Batman together, and I had been doing Dick Grayson, who was, the easiest character to write because he was so scared of being Batman and so excited by it, and I felt that way too. And he wears his heart under his sleeve, well, he'd be like, "What am I doing on this rooftop gargoyle?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here either." But the great thing about going over to Batman and having Greg was that, I was so scared and so nervous, but I had ideas that I thought were personal to me. And the thing you have to block out is exactly what you're talking about, where you can't think about, how do I add something to this? How do I have a conversation with the history of this character? If you think those things, it becomes completely paralytic, where you suddenly realize, this is a character who has had stories about him that mean more to me than almost anything in literature, and you become frozen. But having a partner like Greg on the book, and he was the first person I told the Court of Owls to in its entirety, even beyond our editor at the time, Mike Martz. I was like, what do you think? And this is what I'm going for. And to have somebody that you and the person you're working with feel like you guys are making something that's yours, not to stand in the canon, but just that you love, that you're going to do together and make a story that's personal to you, that is sort of the antidote to all of the fear and the terror that comes with writing something as big as Batman.
And even for drawing it, when I took over Batman, I was just as scared as Scott was because, everybody loves Batman so much. You don't want to make it suck. Because you're going to stone to death. I don't want to die tomorrow. I don't want to get stoned to death. But the thing is, like we asked, do you plan on doing, this particular thing that'll be, take off, whatever. You can't predict that, you know what I mean? And so Scott's right. If you go, hey, what do they want, and how can I make this biggest, and how you're going to fail because you're going to be paralyzed because you're going to be overthinking, and if you think, you stink, right? And you just got to, like Scott said, he believed in these things. He had these stories that he wanted to tell that were personal to him. I wanted to elevate those. When I work with Scott or any writer, I try and when I'm reading the script, really get inside of the writer's mind to go, what is he really trying to say, so that I can add flourishes artistically that, bring that, to, even out more into the spotlight for people to see. So do we sit there and go, hey, this will become the big thing and they'll praise us for this? No, we're grateful that you praise us. You can't make that happen. It just sort of happens, and we're grateful to it. But yeah, he writes these great stories that I just go, yeah, that's brilliant, that's awesome. And I just try and elevate those in my artwork. And if you guys love it, well, lucky for us. If you guys hate it, we got to take it that way too, So when you say, we've made this or that happen, we're grateful. But We didn't plan it at all, not from day one, you know.
Which kind of leads to my next question, which is, you've had several things pop up in your run that have grown into becoming something entirely, separate. For instance, Duke Thomas, who's a character who shows up in Year Zero, and now is the next evolution, if you will, of Batman. When you had Duke make his first appearance, did you think this is a character I want to revisit later, or was he just a supporting character to tell that story and it just evolved? Same thing with Harper Row. I mean, when you create these characters, are they just part of the initial story, or did you go into it with a plan with both of them? Because they've both become huge parts of the
Let
mythology.
me tell you, Scott plans everything. I can tell he probably knows what he's going to eat for dinner probably 3 months from now on the last Friday of the month. Very methodical. So, yeah. So he'll expand on it, but no, he knows everything.
No, he's right. He's
Where
right.
he's flying, he knows, he's got his flight path going from very long ways back. He's a very planned man.
Well, one of the great things about working with Greg, though, is that I have like a big plan, and sometimes that plan I get so myopic about and so sure that this is the right thing to do that I need somebody to sort of bust the cement and be like, well, what if we did it this way? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, my plan was this. Then I see it, even a scene, like, for example, when we were doing 0 Year, I had this sort of idea in mind when Batman fought the lion. Remember when it was like,
I was getting my taxes done. He phoned me up while I was getting my taxes done. So I was going through the house of pain, but hearing a voice from a friendly person, so.
I was sort of like,
For
well,
everybody,
we
go
face
ahead.
this lion, and it's going to be crazy, but he does it this way, and this way, and this way. And Greg was like, well, what if we do it this way? And I'm like, well, try it
Well,
my
because
way.
you asked me that. You asked me, you go, what do you think about this? I go, I think it'd be cool if you did this. And then when the script came through, it was exactly
It was
what he
mine.
said to me.
Yeah.
When he I go, why did you bother asking? So I did it my way anyway. I was convinced that it was better.
It was better. It was better. That's the great thing, is that, like you're saying, I think in some ways, where when you create a character like Duke or Harper, I do have a plan, and sometimes that coincides with things that DC needs, and sometimes it's just sort of wanting to have different prismatic angles on Gotham. And what I've learned, I think, through my friendship with Greg is being flexible and understanding that what's important isn't necessarily where those characters wind up, but who they are at core, and making sure that when you land them, whether they land as Robin or a new superhero or somebody who isn't sort of in costume, it's true to who they are in terms of their emotional arc from the moment you began them. And so it's been great. Like, in that way, working with him, I feel like it's loosened me up in the way that, a plan, sometimes it gets blown up for silly reasons, for editorial stuff, or just timing-wise, something comes in, destroys it. But he's given me a great perspective in terms of just looking at the characters and the story for what they are, and being able to be more fluid and elastic with what comes down the pipe.
I think you also it's one of those things in comics where you create a situation that audiences know, like, oh, it's not forever. Like, for instance, when you guys made Jim Batman, everyone knows it's a story. It's not all of a sudden like, Bruce.
Not everyone.
Surprised. I got like a physical threat over it.
Yeah, but you should see. People were like, well, how long is this going to happen? And I'd be like, well, Bruce is just dead. He's dead forever. They wouldn't like think that I was being, humorous at all. They'd be like, well, death to you and whatever.
How about this one? Why are you ruining my Batman? Because I'm trying to piss you off.
I'm ruining
I
your
hate
child.
Batman. I'm in place to destroy him. That's of course, right? Obvious.
Exactly.
So when you're confronted by, obviously, rational critics like that, does that ever affect the direction you're going in, or does that just make you stick to your guns even more? Like, you're not going to tell me how to dictate the story. Because I think a lot of writers, especially in the online community, you now see them writing to what the audience says they want rather than what the writer wants it to be.
Scott does not do that.
I don't. But I don't. I will get really hurt by it, and I will call him and be like, oh my God, maybe I'm a hack. What if
But I
I'm
say
terrible?
and not everybody's gonna love you, and that's just part of life, and if you're writing something, as Scott does, that is important stories and well done, you know, there's gonna be a number of people who are gonna love it, and there'll be passionate people who dislike it. And you're not doing your job right if it's all one way.
Do you know what's the funniest thing though? Do you remember when okay, so we did Gordon as Batman, and you know, the same way when we had done Zero Year, I got a lot of criticism before the story came out, where it was like, how could you do this, and da-da-da. And I'm like, remember I call you and I'm like, God, man, they're so mad at us. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, wait, they're mad at you too, right? And he's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, you're getting these tweets, right? That are like, you know, F you. And
Sorry, Scott, we all love me.
And he's like, yeah, that's what I mean. He's like, well, they can't all love you all the time. I'm like, well, you have some hate tweets
I'm sure
right?
there's some haters out there.
And I went through his timeline. I was so angry. I was like, there's nothing but love. I was like, this is gonna suck, but your art's gonna be great. I was so upset, you know?
See, but I am in the catbird seat because, you know, if Scott writes something great, you know, I just draw what I do, and, you know, people will love me for it. If they hate it, I go, well, you know, it's his fault.
I know.
I just drew it.
I did.
I got the perfect out.
I was like logging in as you, being like, you know, looking in and seeing, and everybody was like, well, this might be terrible, but your art will be good. I was so mad. Because you gave me all that advice and I took it to heart. I was like, man, Greg really knows.
But listen.
Wait, what?
I'm an honest guy, and,
thanks.
and if I don't think Scott's on the right track, I'll tell him. Right? When we were doing Endgame, you know, Scott had it written as you all saw it, with the Joker and Batman dying at the end. But what was going on with Scott at the time, which Scott has never done writing a script until I'm on the last page. He's still trying to rewrite stuff. It's a real pain in the ass.
That's true.
But Scott says to me, you know, I'm really thinking about the ending where, you know, it'd be more like Batman to like save the Joker. It'd be more of a punishment to save the Joker, and he like martyrs himself. He dies by himself.
He turns the Joker human, but he himself dies, and
Right.
he sends him up because only one person can go up on the rope, and he stays down and dies, but he saves the
And he goes,
city.
it'd be so eloquent. I go, but that's not what everybody wants. I go, everybody's looking at this like WrestleMania, you know, whatever. And I go, they want to see the Hulk Hogan, you know, slam Andre the Giant kind of thing. I go, they want this big slugfest. Everybody's been itching for it. And Scott goes, okay, I'm going to need to think about it a while. I go, well, please choose wisely. I know what everybody wants, and he's stuck with everybody, right? You guys loved that you saw the big fight, the climactic battle between the two, right? That was the right way to go, was it not?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I agree. And the thing is, you gotta trust your creator. You're gonna see right away, well, he's still trying to rewrite it.
No, I was gonna say that was the first way I wrote it. It was right. I did it the first time right. And then I feel like I chickened out, and then you saved me from that. Where that is the great thing, is having like, he's my brother, you know, not just if we never work together. And I've said this before, but I mean it sincerely. Like, you have certain friendships that you build in comics, because it's so collaborative, where you would trade the stuff that you've done together, even though it's brought you financial success or success in your job, for that friendship. And I feel that way about Greg and about Rafa and Sean, but you know, Greg is my brother. And so all this stuff that like is, it's inside baseball about Batman, it's also inside baseball about our relationship, in the way that, you know, he's saved me from myself on many opportunities, you know, I mean many instances where when I did Zero Year, for example, I was so sure I was doing the right thing. I was like, everyone's gonna hate this. Like, everyone's gonna hate when we announce we're doing a year-long origin. They're gonna hate it, but I know it's the right thing, because it's about what I think Batman should protect my kids from. And it's about gun violence and terrorism, and it's post-apocalyptic. Thank you. And it's like, what year one did for me, my attempt to do what year one did for me when I was a kid in New York, but for my kids, in a way that the problems nowadays in a post-9/11 world are much more, you know, much more broad. They're not as provincial as they were in the dirty, hairy days of, you know, New York being run when I was a kid in the 80s. And I was working on it, and what happened was The End of Death of the Family came out, and that book itself, I had never gotten better reviews. Like, everything was great, and we had never gotten better response, but there was this tremendous backlash beneath the surface, and then on the surface, which was about how all the tie-ins and all these books had been saying somebody was going to die and something was going to happen, and I had not paid any attention to that. I was like, look, if you guys want to use the Joker, do whatever the F you want with him, as long as it's scary as hell, and do what you want, I don't care, go for broke. And so I had blinders on to like the entire sort of momentum that had been building in that event. So when I got to the end, I was like, ta-da, like we ended our story, it's what I had always planned. But there was this online backlash, which was totally justified, which had been, everyone had bought all these books thinking someone was gonna die and something was gonna happen, and it didn't. And it caught me completely off guard, where I was like, but this is the story I was telling and this is what it was. And since then, it was a great lesson, and I've learned since then. But what I would say, you should have some, is that...
Seems to be going to waste.
is that when I got to, it really knocked me. Like, it knocked me off balance. And then when the criticism came, well, now you're doing a year-long origin, get this guy off the book. Like, it really hit me. And it was like a left-right combination. And I just got completely depressed, where I was like, you know what, I should have quit. After Quarter Vowels, I'm not ready for this. Like, this is not what I know.
I was listening to this for so long.
I'm like, yeah, right? And the Batman money, just like, oh, it's so funny. No, but it's true. I was like, I mean, because I've always had anxiety and depression since a kid. I've been on, medication, seen, whatever. But it just hit me, and I was paralyzed. And I called him, and I'm like, I might need some time to reboot. I don't know that I can do this. I might call DC and Didio and Johns and be like, I don't know that I can write this right now, because every time I sit down to write, the experience was like this. A voice in your head says, oh, you're writing that sentence sucks. Oh, okay. You push through it, you write the next sentence. Oh, you're gonna write that sucks.
You see?
And you
It shows I love him, right?
Yeah, he does do that. I love him too. But I would have a panic attack and have to get up and walk away from the computer and walk around the house, calm down, sit back down. Okay, page 2. You're gonna write that? That sucks. Okay, panic attack, get up, walk around, come back.
Call Greg.
Well, I did. And this guy was just like, he was so awesome about, you believed in this, and I believe in it, and this is the origin, it's for your kids, and all that stuff, and just pushed me through it till I got to issue 2 or 3. And the irony is, like, you guys read the books and you have your favorite parts, but I have my secret favorite parts, which are much more a scrapbook of our friendship over the years, and that's the thing that I'm proudest of looking back at Batman. Today it was funny because people brought up the book, remember, I didn't remember some of the good lines where I'm like, oh, like where he's like,
He's like, look what I wrote, and then he high-fived
I was like,
times.
I was like, I forgot that I written like, I'd make you Batman. I'm like, that's great.
I'm high-fiving.
And I'm like, but when I look back, the thing that makes me happiest looking back at our run is that it's a scrapbook of our friendship, and it's a friendship that I'll carry with me till I'm dead. In that way, where I feel like, you guys, what I hope is special.
Sometimes I'd like to kill him.
Yeah, tomorrow. I love you, Greg.
And he said to me one time when I told him that, he goes, but you want to kill me like Homer chokes Bart, but he really loves him, right?
I remember, he's like, I want to choke you out. It was over Jake's helmet. Do you remember it was over the helmet? It was like, it was
so many times I want to choke you.
It is. Well, because I'm like, I'm not going to bother him with this. But he'd want to know. And then I'm like, oh, it's just a detail. Don't bother him with it.
But he bothers me.
Yeah, but I'm like, oh, just in case. You might want to make this whatever, but don't worry about it. Did you get my last email? Because it's just, it's not important, but.
It's really mad at me sometimes.
Hey, how are you doing? It's like, I hope you had a good weekend. I don't know if you got my last email.
Yes, I've ignored them all. But the thing is, Scott is obsessive, and that he wants it to be the best it could be and all this stuff like that. But I've been around the block a little bit, and especially when I worked with Todd McFarlane and stuff. And one of the things that I learned from Todd was that, you can have stuff in your head, but nobody else in the audience knows what you have in your head. It's only important to you, and you only know it. And how it comes out, they're not going to know if it deviated from any original course that you have. They're going to judge it as what you put out there. So that's one component. And then the other thing I tell Scott kind of routinely to get him to see the scope of things, I say, it doesn't matter how many people don't get it. It only matters how many people do get it, right? Because if you own 51% of the company, you own the company, right? And so I go, not everybody's going to jump on board and love what you do. And that's just an unrealistic goal. So as long as the majority is for you, hey, you're winning, right?
And then I'm like, wait, what percent like you? And you're like, oh, 100. Percent like me?
So that's the truth. And you know, you guys have proven to us that the majority like what we do. So how are you gonna complain?
Well, and
if
the other
somebody
thing I'd
doesn't?
say, I feel like it's like you got to ask one question. But the other thing I'd say is that, and I mean this sincerely, like for all my anxiety and all my insecurity and my, you know, my craziness, when I have a partner like Greg, I believe in something like a 0 year or super heavy, and I say, I will suffer, like I will have a lot of trouble with it, and I will call him and be a mess. But I'll never turn away from it, and I'll do that story, even if it means the end of my career, because I believe in that story. No, but the other thing that I'm getting at is that the thing that's been so rewarding from Court of Owls to now, to All-Star everything, is that whenever we do take a risk and I brace for impact, where I'm like, they're not gonna follow us on this.
Greg,
Like,
he apologized ahead of time.
I do. I say,
I'm really sorry. I'm telling you I'm sorry right now, in case, you know, they all jump ship and hate us from now on. It's my fault, and I'm really sorry.
But we're doing
if
it.
we jump like 10 sharks now.
I
But we still ahead.
but because he supports me, and
I
like
said, don't worry about
yeah, and then the
I
great
love
thing
it.
is, the thing to your
It's
guys'
good.
credit is that you never let Batman, no matter what we did, whether it was Gordon or 0 year or
it.
Endgame,
Especially Gordon.
yeah, especially fall in sales from the minute. And I don't care about sales. I was supposed to be like a poet, and my wife is a doctor. So in terms of sales, like you make money, I was always supposed to be like the broke ass. She was ready for that. So it's never like, hey, you know, you bought the book and we made money. But the sales are a validation of the fact that you guys are the best audience in the world, and that when we take risks that we believe in, and we talk to you about what we're thinking and why we want to do them, you follow us with the same energetic support that when we do that's there when we do classic stuff. And that has been my compass from the beginning, and Greg's as well, with whatever we do. When we come back together and do this event next summer, all of it is like, you know what? They like when we take a risk and do something that's crazy, but is true to core with these characters, because they know baked into the DNA of the story is a love for this mythology as well.
Bingo.
And
They
you guys
know that you and I love Batman as
Yeah.
much as they love Batman, right? You can tell we love it, right? Yeah, we do. And I think that's the selling point. We learned with a degree of trust because we've done several stories together, and we passionately love the character, and we're passionate about our craft. And you all sense that, right? Because we never cheat, we never give you less than. We always try and give you the most we can for the money, and we love Batman as much as you love Batman. And that's why we're all one big family.
Yeah, it's true, and it really is. Like, you guys, you never let us down.
So I'll be over your house for turkey dinner in November.
Which leads me to
I'm listening intently.
well, with the end of your run. I mean, you gave Bruce a happy ending, and then you had the inevitable task that you knew was coming, and the audience knew was coming, is that Bruce had to become Batman again. Was that emotionally tough to do? I mean,
Oh yeah, that was. I mean, I remember I told you where it was the saddest thing in the whole run. I think when we did that part where it was, you know, Alfred has to give Bruce back to the Batman mythos. Remember, you texted me. I remember you was like,
Oh, you son of a... You're making me
Yeah.
cry over here.
there's a great
I
panel
know.
where that Greg drew of Alfred looking at his back that's not
Yeah.
covered in
That's
shrapnel
one of my
and
favorites.
scarring, and knowing that like he's sending his son back
Yeah.
out there.
Now, I've been doing comics a long time, all right? So, you know, you're kind of jaded. You've done so much. But Scott writes certain things, and that's one of the instances where, you know, I got very emotional. And, you know, when I read it, it had a lot of impact on me. But then, when I was drawing it, I swear to you, and I mean, don't make fun of me, I'll kill you. But I had tears in my eyes, you know? I mean, they were welled up, you know what I mean? I just, you know, I wouldn't let them fall because I'm too manly. But I was like, you just stay on the rim. If you know what's good for you, stay on the rim. And, but yeah, you know, it was so emotional because I felt it, especially being an older guy now and raising my wife's kids and stuff. So I got that whole perspective now, what it's like to be a father. And you just go, I felt for Alfred. And I go, because he knows, he's seen the horror. And Bruce is unaware because he's forgotten it all. And how painful that has to be for him to go, I saw my dream come true for a minute for Bruce, which that gave me such joy as, you know, his surrogate father. And to then be going, marching him back out and having to accept that, I gotta go through this all over again, watching my son get all scarred up and nearly killed, maybe one day perhaps being killed. It was a brutal scene that he wrote for me. So that's one of the things I think is why Scott is a great writer, because if he could pull those kind of emotions out of me who's been doing it so long, then I go, well, how much, you know, more is he gonna pull out of the audience who's got a fresher heart, a fresher set of eyes and mind than this old guy? You know, so yeah, he writes great, layered, deep, emotional things that even hook me when I'm reading and drawing. It's brilliant.
Thanks. Alfred's my favorite for that reason, because he's like me. I've been having boys as well, and my son is like, I want to be an ultimate fighter. And I'm like, just picturing sitting by the octagon, being like, go son. I'm just so horrified at your life, like, you know, like knee him. That's Alfred. Where Alfred like hates what his kid does, but is so proud of him for fighting a good fight in that way that.
Did you see that ground and pound?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of Alfred, you had a book come out this week, the first issue of All-Star Batman #1. I've read it out a couple times, and I thought it was fantastic. And the first thing is that one of the biggest characters of your run with Greg is Gotham City.
Mm-hmm.
And the first issue of this, Gotham.
Yeah, well, it really was like I really did do some sort of soul searching when Greg and I decided that we were going to end our run where, you know, Batman will always be me and Greg. I knew I wasn't going to stay on Batman without Greg. And I was wondering, do I do detective? Do I do this or that? It'll always be me and him. Like, I wasn't going to stay on that title, even though I will tell you this, like, frankly, DC was like, we're doing a double shift. Batman is like, Dan, and I hope Dan's not here, or whatever, he was here before. To Dio. I was like, but, you know, they were very enthusiastic about me staying and doing a double ship, and it would have been double the money and all that kind of stuff, you know, to stay and do that. But I really felt like Batman was me and Greg, and that was it. It was done, and I wasn't going to do it without him. So then I was like, well, do I want Wonder Woman or this or that? And what it came down to is I realized I had some stories that I thought would sort of examine the villains and redesign them to be scary in a way that was personal to me, but also a modern take on each of them. Like, and every story would take place out of Gotham. And that was the hook for me, because our conversation, I think, with you guys was so much about Batman and Gotham and what it means to be challenged by this terrible antagonist that is the city in all kinds of ways, and what the city asks of you as a hero. So this series is completely out of Gotham, where it's in Savannah, that's Catwoman, and Miami is Penguin. It's like Miami Vice. It's kind of awesome. I love it. It's so ugly. I just love the way, I love how corny he is.
And who's drawing those two arcs?
Well, Mr. Freeze is Jock and Francesco, so it's like our Black Mirror team.
Great stuff, right?
Afua Richardson is Catwoman, and Tula Lote, Lisa, is Poison Ivy, and Paul Pope wants to do the, I know, he's amazing. He wants to do the Joker, but it depends on when the 3 Joker stuff gets done. We might do Mad Hatter, and then Sean Murphy is doing the big finale. That's
Sean Murphy's my personal.
He's great.
Love Sean.
He's sort of the finale about who's the greatest villain. It's a surprise, it's a mystery, and it's a lot of fun. It's kind of my DKR. But, you know, also, I vetted all this with Greg. That's the funny thing. I was like, you know, if you go, I want you to know this is what I'm thinking about. What do you think? And he was crazy supportive. And everybody on the book, by the way, is enamored of Greg. Like, you know, a lot of us are friends, like Sean and Jock. We're all friends, but also like JR, like Ramita, who lives like right down the street from me, weirdly enough, is so intimidated and such an admirer of what Greg did. And to hear Greg say such nice stuff about him, it's wonderful. It's funny, because he's also like a super muscular Italian dude. Like, you know, and I'm like, didn't I just work with you? It's like, I can't stop. I'm going to the gym. And I'm like, wait, what? Right? You know, but yeah, so, well, moving over has been a lot of fun, but a lot of it is also, All-Star is all about flexing different muscles and doing Batman like off-roading to show you what it's like when it's unbound from having to be the punishingly singular book. The fact that it's sold as well as it has as All-Star, again, is a testament to your guys' support of us trying risky things, and that is a whole separate conversation. But the great thing is I took it as a way of sort of trying things that I'd never done on a character because I knew Greg was coming back in the late fall, early winter to do something for next summer that I would need a lot of room for as well. That I would need a lot of room for, so it would make it something that's huge and big and DC and event style stuff. So All-Star is a place I can go and sort of explore all kinds of personal demons and reinvent villains and do all this crazy stuff. And then, come spring, we'll have like our giant DC stuff together.
But you had, has everyone read the book, the first issue?
Yes.
It's good. There's a startling revelation at the end of the first issue with the character you seem to care so much about,
I know.
Mr. Pennyworth. Does this have to do with Harvey's, and if you haven't read it, Harvey Dent is the bad guy, the first story. With Harvey having the goods on everybody. Does Alfred have secrets to protect that are that secretive that Bruce's life is?
He does. He's secretly part of Hydra. The Alfred thing, the thing that's fun about Alfred is, like I said, he's the dad that doesn't want his son to do what he does, and I think he secretly tries to protect him. So, to be totally, not to spoil it, but Alfred, whatever Alfred did that got him into trouble with Two-Face was something to protect Bruce, and what he's doing here is to protect Bruce in some way. He is the person that betrayed Bruce in a way he didn't mean to Two-Face, that gave Two-Face the access to ruin Batman forever. And so he's been protecting him in some ways to the best of his ability. But the thing that's really fun about it is Two-Face to me is sort of, and I did this with Greg, it's like every arc I want to be something that's about right now and it's personal. So, not to get like too on the couch, Greg knows this stuff, but like, there was a person in my wife's life who passed away not too long ago who had a lot of personal demons and never really overcame them. And so I started thinking about using Two-Face when we were dealing with sort of the aftermath of this person's death, thinking about, well, what if we are actually the collective or the cumulative sort of math of our worst parts and not our best parts. Our best parts are just the face we put out to the world. And the worst parts of us are the parts that are the real us that we just don't want to admit. And then came all this election stuff, which is crazy, which also, again, like regardless of your politics, no. Whether the story is in no way political and that it doesn't side with, one side or the other at all. But what it's about is almost like a moment when we're facing all of these crazy, scary things, right? Like global warming and globalization and all of this stuff that seems systemically impossible to overcome. And I think our impulse is to either sort of say the right thing to the world and say, well, I believe in this, and secretly behind closed doors do other things. Or to retreat from it entirely and just say, well, I'm looking out for myself. And so Two-Face says, this is my moment. Like the chaos that ensued when, terrorism and gun violence and all this stuff started, that was Joker's moment. But we're used to it now, and how we react to it and how we look out for ourselves and not for each other is my moment. I am the god of this time. And so in that way, it's a tremendously fun story to write, and it's the reason I took him out of Gotham is to say, Bruce, take a look at everything you're not familiar with, all the people that you don't normally see. Are you the hero of this story, or are you the villain? Are you secretly just, if a hero is somebody who puts everybody else before themselves, and a villain is somebody who puts themselves before everybody else, and nobody really wants you to turn into Two-Face because you'll expose all of their secrets. Are you the villain or are you the hero? And that is so fun to deal with. Plus, it's like KG Beast is the bad guy who Penguin hires and chases them on the road, and it's gas stations and chainsaws and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I'm really proud of it for that reason. Like each arc, and I did this with him too, is like it's meant to be about something that's personal to you, and the fact that you guys have responded so positively to it really means the world.
You did a really interesting thing structure-wise in the first issue where you kind of did some time jumping You tell the story non-linearly, 2
Mhm.
hours ago, 2 days ago, all of them obviously with the 2 theme. Is that throughout the entire arc or just the first issue?
No, it's the arc. Actually, I took some flack for that, I think, in some of the things where basically if you've read the first issue, it goes present, and then it goes 22 minutes ago, and it's on the plane with Two-Face, who's like, you threw it away, well, it's coming back. And then it goes 2 hours ago, it's 2 weeks ago, and then it goes back. But the story is largely about Two-Face saying, I'm the person that makes you look at the darkest stuff, at the core of you, the bedrock stuff, and say, is that who I am or not? And so weirdly, I tried to structure every issue like a V, where it goes backwards through time and forwards through time. So as weird as it is, like, believe me, I know you're not supposed to do like a flashback within a flashback. You know, I teach writing and all that stuff too. Like, I'm not just like, hey, I'll just throw another flashback in. It's meant to be sort of, for better or worse, a parallel or a reflection of what he's saying, where he says, I make you look at the stuff that's the deepest and oldest that you don't want to see, and then come back to the present and see if you're okay.
Another concept you introduced in the first issue is the cursed wheel, which I think is pretty interesting. Can you explain what that is to everybody?
Yeah, that's something I talked about with him. I've been thinking about it forever. I was sort of like, well, Batman has this Robin program, or Robin, where he has people come in and be his sidekick, but then eventually they sort of graduate to be heroes or not or whatever. And what if instead of being Robin, because Duke has been Robin and we are Robin, and Damian is firmly Robin in Teen Titans. And so I was like, to make Duke Robin, we'll make him feel secondary in Batman because Damian is Robin in Teen Titans, and that's not fair to the character. What if Batman has a program that says, look, you're not training to be Robin. This is what I put people through from now on to become the hero they're going to be. You stand by my side. It's not about being Robin. It's about figuring out your name and who you are and all this stuff. And it's a lot of fun, too. Duke comes up with all these fake names and fucks with Batman all the time. Where he's like, Blacklight. And Batman's like, what? And he's like, you thought I was serious? And he's like, yeah, There's all these kinds of like jokes that Duke makes where he is also figuring himself out along the way. And I'm so happy with that part of the arc where it really is sort of and I worked on it with Jeff Johns a little bit too, figuring out what place this character could fill that would actually be new in the DCU. Because I felt like it's easy to make a character Robin, they're a sidekick, they stand next to Batman, they need a new take on it, but it's not that hard to do. But figuring out a place that's sort of empty, that a character, because of who they are, psychologically, emotionally, can fill as a hero, is harder. And so I'm really proud of where Duke winds up. He has a role to fill that's brand new in the DCU.
And do you think that lack of structure is the right word, or is why characters like say Batwing, who was an interesting character, just never really took off? Is that because there's no grand plan? It's just, hey, let's have a robot Batman, or
I don't know. I think it takes looking at it and saying, building them slowly over time. You guys are so generous when it comes to a character that I think is sort of integrated organically. And so my goal with Duke is to just make sure, because he's a character that we developed together, that he lands in a way that feels right to you guys, and that you feel like this isn't a character that's being given a role that feels superfluous or duplicative or anything like that, or derivative, but instead feels
You sound like a writer.
No, it's true. I haven't seen that. Like, I haven't seen that the way Barbara became Oracle, and it was like, oh, I haven't seen that before. You know what I mean? Like, this is, and I have a role for him I'm really excited about, where it's sort of like, I haven't seen that. Like, that's new in Gotham,
On your run together, you also didn't really tackle his extended family quite so much. You had them, they were in Death of the Family, but we didn't really see much interaction with Nightwing and Robin and Batgirl. Is that something that just you didn't want to focus on Bruce, or is it something that you just didn't get time to do?
Let me say one quick thing about this, and then I want to pass it to him to talk, but I get a lot of criticism for not using Damian and other characters more in our run. And the thing I would say, there's two reasons I don't use Damian, I didn't use the Bat Family. One is totally logistical, that we were asked not to use a lot of the characters in Batman because they had starring roles in other books. So when Pete was writing Batman and Robin with Pat, I was not supposed to use Damian as much because that character was featured there, and our book was a solo Batman book. So if I brought him in, it was sort of like, hey, here he is in a panel. The reason beyond that, like, and then again, like later when Damien was dead, I didn't use him. And then when he was resurrected, there was a story that was happening with him where I felt like, again, I'd be stealing the thunder of that story to use him. So, you know, that's why I didn't use him. The other reason that I sort of shy away from Damien, to be totally frank, is that my son is very close to Damien's age. My son is 9 and Damien is 10. And I have a very hard time writing a character who's close to my son's age, fighting next to Batman with Bruce's approval, you know, getting punched and shot at and that stuff. And it makes perfect sense when I read it in other people's hands, like when I read Pete doing it or Grant doing it or anybody. I love reading Damien, but I have a very hard time personally between us writing him because I cannot imagine my son next to me getting threatened by people and allowing that. So I just have a personal problem writing him, even though I love reading him.
Greg. You left Gotham for Scotland.
Yeah, well, I'm still in Scotland.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the new book?
Yeah, well, just a little bit. But I mean, the thing is, you know, writers have the benefit of being able to write multiple books a month. So, you know, he's had the luxury of working with a lot of talented people while keeping me home, washing the dishes, making the bed, cooking, cleaning for me. And so it's kind of unfair, you know. So I want to have a little fling, you know, see what it's like, walk on the wild side. And so anyway, my contract was up, and I have every intention of coming back and working with Scott, but you know, I don't have, you know, this long career because an artist locks in and that's it. He's settled and he's married to one writer for, you know, some duration. So anyway, it just happened to be, you know, Mark Millar. I prefer Millar. I don't care. It's Miller, but I like the way it's spelled. Millar. It's Millar. And I love it. It just sounds cooler. Mark, change your name. So the opportunity came, and you know, he's like, I've been waiting to work with you for a long time. It's just sort of been the right time now. And so I told DC, you know, and Scott, you know, I'm going to go do this because it's a limited series. It's 6 issues, 7 really, because one's double size. But anyway, it's a very cool story. Reborn is what it's called, and
It's awesome. Seriously, it's one of the best ideas I've heard, and his art is just out of control on it because Mark gives him tons of room.
And I have
he sends me all the like a lot of pages, and it's so good. You guys have to pick it up October.
Oh, thanks. Well, I have a little more time because I'm not on the monthly grind, so I can put a little more effort into the artwork. Not that I didn't put it, but you know what I'm saying? It's like eventually the clock runs out, you know what I mean? And now I get a little bit more. Like if I don't finish the page that day, not such a big deal where I have to still work for 16 hours until it's done or whatever. So, and I have a little more room. But it's about an 85-year-old woman who's close to death, and she's so fearful because she doesn't think that anything's after. She doesn't believe in heaven and hell or anything like that. And when she's reborn as a 24-year-old into this world, and she's like clad in armor, she's got a sword, a gun, all this stuff like that. And she runs into her father. That's the first guy she reunites with, and he's this big, hefty warrior guy. And essentially, if you're a good person here now, like, you know, us, you are born as a good person there. And everything we have in our head, all our knowledge, whatever our occupation was, it's carried along with us. And all the bad people are there too. And they're reincarnated in the forms of, you know, monsters, demons, all kinds of horrible things. And so the clash of good and evil takes place and continues there. And our star, this old woman whose name is Bonnie Black, she's been prophesied in their realm to be the savior, to win the great battle against Golgotha, who's the ultimate evil. So it's very kind of Lord of the Ring-ish, kind of mixed with a little bit of Road Warrior kind of stuff like that. So I get to draw all kinds of fantastic things, you know, that, you know, we all love that stuff. And so now I get to draw all this fantastic ideas. And so I'm looking forward to it. I hope you pick it up because it's really, really something action-packed and just stunning.
The funniest thing is, like, I saw it and it was so good and everything, and then I'm like, it looks amazing and it's going to be terrific and you should pick it up. Then I was like, well, when Greg comes back, I'm going to top that. And I was like, I really did. And then I called him, I was like, think about for
I can write a dragon.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know, I'm not even kidding. I was like Batman with a battle axe on a motorcycle in front of Arkham and there are dragons in the sky. Go. I really was. That's like literally my pitch. That's him. Like, yeah. I was like, Wonder Woman on a tank with dinosaurs.
I'm in.
I was like Superman in an alien gladiator pit putting on his golden armor.
I'm so in.
I did. That was, if again, like if Dan is like readying his poison darts. But yeah.
So, Justice League next summer.
Yeah, no. I would do that. I would do Justice League with him anytime. Basically, wherever he wants to go, I'll go. You know, and do because. It was like Scooby-Doo.
I can rock that joke.
All right, I think we need to wrap up. I did one last question for Scott, and that's American Vampire and Witches. When will we?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, let me just be completely frank with you guys. The reason that we have not Witches was not totally my fault. Witches was partly Jock. It was partly my fault, but that was the only one where he'll tell you like now it's not secret. So Jock basically got
to work at a circus. Who doesn't want to work at a circus?
Jock called me
On the
and
high
he's like-
trapeze.
Yeah, he's like, well, I got a job, you know, and it might make witches a little late and blah blah. You know, I'm like,
I'll
what
get
is
to
it?
use your trapeze.
Right. It's like, and I'm like, what is it? And he sent me a picture, and it was like, he was the second costume designer in episode 8, Pinewood, and it was a picture of Mark Hamill wearing his robe that he designed, and it was like, you're forgiven. Witches will still be there. Like, do your thing.
What's episode 8?
What?
What is episode 8? Is that?
You know, Star Wars episode 8.
Star Wars.
Star Wars, yeah.
Come on, get with it.
Your nerd card is revoked. But anyway, what really happened was that I started working on this book called After Death with Jeff Lemire. Thanks. It's coming out in November, and I'm really proud of it. But originally it was supposed to be about 60 pages, and it's like super autobiographical. It's about like, and I told him this last night. I'm like, the moment I became afraid of death and like we were at dinner, remember? And I'm like, and the leaves. I was like on and on about it. But this book it's really memoirish, and it's part prose. And Jeff kept encouraging me to go with it. He's like, it's great, just keep going. And so it turned out to be about 190 pages. When it was supposed to be about 60 or less. So it's taken me almost 2 years, and the thing that I've realized is working on prose, usually I'm used to jumping from Batman to Witches to American Vampire to Superman to whatever, The Wake, and even if the books are wildly different, you're flexing the same muscles. But with prose, it's like, hey Greg, it's dark and stormy, and da-da-da, and you're like, wait, I have to make it dark and stormy with my words. You know, and like, it just takes infinitely longer.
Together, I can cover them up with pictures.
I know. Well, it takes infinitely longer to actually write the prose, and so AD has been a bit of a dam for me in a good way, and I couldn't be prouder of it. I'm really excited. It's going to be released in 3 books, like 1, 2, 3, November, December, January. It's 3 parts, so 60 pages. Or sorry, it's actually it's a little longer than that. It's almost 200 pages, so it's about 65, so whatever for $5.99, but you know, an Image and whatever for reduced price and all that stuff. Because I was like, to Image, I'm like, just make it free. And they were like, well, we have to recoup our production costs, so it's the lowest amount we could make it to be able to give it to you guys. But essentially, it became something that I couldn't go back and forth on week to week to week. So it's the reason that American Vampire got held up and other things and stuff. But now that it's finishing, I started American Vampire actually last week. Again, with Rafa, who's here, who's awesome. And Witches, we start next month. So all of that stuff will start rolling out of progress. After that, really, for better or worse, and I hope you guys love it, it's a lot of prose. It really just became something that I was like, I have to try to do this thing, and it just took up a lot of time. So that's all it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Snyder.